Hello everyone, this is Shruti. I welcome you all in this session. In the previous video, we have discussed till the breakdown of glucose in different pathways. So if you haven't watched that video, link is in the description box below. Please to go through that video. In this video, we'll discuss about respiration in human being as well as transportation in human being. But before starting with the respiration in human being, let us go to the difference between aerobic and anaerobic mode of respiration. So let's go. So we'll discuss about difference between aerobic and anaerobic mode of respiration. So first is aerobic. The simple difference or the basic difference between aerobic and anaerobic mode of respiration is nothing. In aerobic, it takes place in the presence of oxygen, while in anaerobic, it takes place in the absence of oxygen, right? This is a simple definition or simple difference you can say. Now we have seen in breakdown of glucose that aerobic mode it takes place in the mitochondria. Also it releases carbon dioxide, water and ATP also. Right. So aerobic mode it takes place in mitochondria, whereas anaerobic mode it takes place in yeast during fermentation. It releases lactic acid, ethanol and ATP. So these are the difference between aerobic mode and anaerobic mode of respiration. Now let us go to an important point, that is respiration in human beings. Basically, respiration is a process in organism where exchange of gases between the body cell and environment takes place. Basically, it is an exchange of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide taking place, right? So it begins from the nose. Our nose, it has two holes which are known as nostrils, right? So air is taken through the nostril, which is filtered with fine hair that line the passage. It is filtered with the fine hair, and also it is lined with mucus which helps in this process, right? There is also a passage behind the nostril which is called as nasal passage or nasal cavity. So air from respiration is drawn into our body through nostril present in the nose, right? This air it goes to the nasal passage, which is actually separated from the mouth cavity, or you can say as buccal cavity, oral cavity by heart. It's a pony palate so that we can breathe in air even when we are eating food. Okay, and that nasal passage it is lined with fine hairs and mucus which helps in the process, right? So from there air passes through throat, which has a stretched membrane that vibrate when air passes from it to produce a sound, right? You can see in the diagram it's given. Now there are also ring of cartilage that are present and that ensure the air passage that it does not get collapsed, right? So first we'll discuss about the difference between inhalation and exhalation. Since we are in the nose, we inhale and as well as we exhale, right? So let us go to the difference between them. So first, inhalation is nothing but taking in air, right? And while we take in air, we lift our ribs and also we flatten our diaphragm, right? We lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm. So as we lift our ribs, the chest cavity, it becomes larger. And why it becomes larger? So that air is sucked in lung and feels expanded alveoli. That would help more air, amount of air to get inside, right? And exhalation here, it's opposite of inhalation. We give out carbon dioxide, right? And here we relax our ribs and diaphragm makes a dome shape, right? And as a result, chest cavity it becomes smaller. Here the chest cavity become larger, and in exhalation it becomes smaller, right? Now inside the lungs, what happened? When the air passes inside the lung, there is a passage that divides smaller and smaller tube which finally terminate into the balloon-like structure, or you can say grapes-like structure, which are called as alveoli. These are nothing but alveoli. Smaller and smaller tube, finally it terminates in balloon-like structure. These are known as alveoli. You can see in the diagram here, this is a balloon-like structure which is known as alveoli. This alveoli provide a surface where exchange of gases can take place. The wall of alveoli contains the extensive network of blood vessels. Why? The blood brings carbon dioxide from rest of the body for release into alveoli, and oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood in alveolar blood vessels, which be transported to all the cell in the body, right? So alveoli, it is a balloon-like structure, and which actually divided into smaller and smaller tube, and finally it is terminated into balloon-like structure. You can say grape-like structure, which is known as alveoli, right? And this here exchange of gases takes place, right? So here respiration in lungs takes place. Okay, so talking about hemoglobin, as you can see in this diagram, you can see hemoglobin. So in human being, the respiratory pigment hemoglobin, there is a respiratory pigment called as hemoglobin, which you have learned about. It has high affinity of oxygen, right? For oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscles. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen, and hence it is mostly transported into dissolved form of our blood, because carbon dioxide, it is more soluble in water, right? So therefore transported in the dissolved form in our body, oxygen, right? Next, transportation in human beings, right? Here, first, we'll go on with blood. Blood, we have discussed that it is a fluid connective tissue. Now, that blood, it consists of fluid membrane, or you can say fluid medium, which is called as plasma, in which cells are suspended, right? And this plasma, it transports food, carbon dioxide, and nitrogenous waste, right? It carries food, carbon dioxide, and nitrogenous waste in the dissolved form. Similarly, red blood corpuscles, it carries oxygen, and by the blood salt are also transported. So here there is a transportation of food, carbon dioxide, nitrogenous waste by plasma, then oxygen by red blood corpuscles, or you can say RBCs, and salt by blood, right? Now we can see here there's a human heart, which we'll discuss in detail. So, talking about heart, we'll go one by one in detail. First, we'll talk about its shape and size. So, basically, it is a muscular organ of J shape. It has J shape. It is as big as our fist. Okay, its location, it lies in the little left side above the diaphragm, surrounded by pericardium. Okay, it is surrounded by pericardium, and it is slightly tilted. You must have observed it that is slightly tilted. It is as big as our fist. Okay, it is slightly to the left side. Now the weight of heart is about 250 to 300 grams. Okay, then it has two sides. Basically it divides into atrium and ventricle, that is left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. Basically right atrium, it receives the blood from the veins and pump it to the right ventricle. Then right ventricle receives the blood from right atrium, pumps it to the lungs, where it is loaded with oxygen. Then talking about left atrium, it receives the oxygenated blood from lung and pump it to the left ventricle. Whereas talking about left ventricle, here it is the strongest chamber. Basically it pumps oxygen rich blood to rest of the body, and left ventricle's vigorous contraction create our blood pressure. So basically it contracts so that it would create the blood pressure to be transported right to the rest of the body. Next, there is a double circulation taking place. Basically, that is systematic circulation and pulmonary circulation. It's very important to understand. So we'll go one by one in detail. And also it has four chambers, right, which prevent in mixing of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is actually harmful if it mix. So, okay. So first we'll go on with systematic circulation. Here there is oxygenated blood. Okay, oxygenated blood transfers. Now from left auricle to left ventricle. Here systematic circulation takes place in left auricle as well as left ventricle. Here oxygenated blood is pumped, so it pumps through various parts, through arteries, through capillaries and then tissue of the body. And the deoxygenated blood is collected from various body organ by veins to pour into vena cava and finally into right atrium, and then it transfers the blood into left ventricle. Right, that means systematic circulation, it takes place in left auricle to left ventricle. Also oxygenated blood is transferred, right? And then the deoxygenated blood, it is collected from various organ, various part through the veins, okay? And oxygenated blood is transferred through the arteries. So here we get the difference between arteries and veins, which we'll see further as well. So it finally, then the oxygenated blood, it is collected from various organ by the vein to pour into vena cava, and there is superior vena cava as well as inferior vena cava, and it is finally into right atrium and transferred the blood into right ventricle. Okay, next is pulmonary circulation. Now here we have seen in systematic circulation that there is a oxygenated blood, but here in the pulmonary circulation there is a deoxygenated blood. It is pumped by right ventricle into the lung, basically first in right atrium, then it goes to right ventricle into the lungs, and then from the right ventricle it goes into the lungs for oxygenation, right? And then the oxygenated blood is brought back to left atrium of the heart. Okay, now from the left atrium the oxygenated blood is pushed towards left ventricle. We have seen the cycle, right, in the systematic circulation. The ventricle here, it pumps the oxygenated blood into aorta for systematic circulation, and the cycle goes on. Okay, here if we talk about the separation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood in human being, it is very important. Why? Because it makes their circulatory system more efficient. Also, it helps in maintaining constant body temperature. First of all, it makes it more efficient. It makes circulatory system more efficient. Also, it helps in maintaining constant body temperature, right? Now here, as we have seen pulmonary circulation and systematic circulation, here the blood goes to heart twice during each cycle, right, in other vertebrates. So this is known as double circulation because the blood goes into heart twice during each cycle. So that is why this is known as double circulation. Okay, so I hope you got it. Now, we'll see the difference between arteries and veins. We have seen in systematic circulation as well as in pulmonary circulation. The first difference, that is arteries, it carries oxygenated blood, in which in systematic circulation, right, whereas veins in pulmonary circulation carries deoxygenated blood from tissue capillary back towards heart. Second, valves. Talking about valves, in arteries these are absent, whereas in veins these valves are present, right? These are also called as red blood vessel. Arteries are also known as red blood vessel. Opposite to that, veins are called as blue blood vessel. Okay, here in arteries oxygenated blood are there. It is oxygenated blood is transported. Exception is pulmonary arteries, which actually carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, then in vein they carry deoxygenated blood, but there is also exception, that is pulmonary veins. Okay, this carries the oxygenated blood, right? So I hope this session was very good and which would it would be helpful for each one of you. So do like, share and subscribe this channel. Also, if you have any doubt, you can comment me in the comment section below. And thank you and take care.